What if survival itself was determined by the smallest enemy of all, the sting of a swarm? Imagine a world where early humans 4.6 million years ago did not just face the jaws of lions or the shadows of saber-toothed predators, but a sea of venomous ants that ruled the plains like fire itself. How would fragile tribes endure when the very ground beneath their feet could erupt into living agony? This is not a tale of beasts and storms alone, but of the clash between human instinct and the relentless hunger of nature's smallest warriors. The sun was already high when a band of Australopithecus crept through the brittle grass of the African plains, their movements cautious, their nostrils flaring at the dry heat. One young male carried a stone in his hand, crude yet sharp, his eyes locked on a root jutting from the earth. Food was scarce, and every fiber of their being sought nourishment. Yet beneath the cracked soil a colony stirred. Ants, thousands of them, streamed upward in sudden fury, their stings piercing flesh with burning venom. The band scattered with guttural cries, arms slashing at their own skin feet, stomping the ground alive with torment. This was the first test of the day, survival not from the hunt, but from being hunted by creatures smaller than a fingernail. The tribe regrouped near a narrow river, panting, their bodies marked with red welts. One elder female crouched, grinding leaves between stones, smearing the green paste onto inflamed skin. It was crude medicine instinct more than knowledge, but it offered relief. The youngest huddled together, eyes wide, already learning the lesson that survival here meant constant vigilance, not just for predators lurking in tall grass, but for the swarms beneath their feet. Hunger gnawed at their bellies, and so the tribe pressed onward. Ahead, across an open stretch of plain, the silhouettes of grazing antelope shimmered in the heat. The hunters tensed, signaling with grunts and gestures. A coordinated rush would scatter the herd, perhaps yielding a kill. Yet the very soil they crouched upon betrayed them. As they stalked low through the grass, the earth erupted again, columns of ants surging from unseen mounds. Panic clashed with hunger. One male shrieked as stings covered his legs, but another leapt forward, ignoring the pain, driving a stone at an antelope's flank. The beast kicked wildly. The attempt failed, and the tribe retreated, battered not by horns or claws, but by countless stingers. This was their world, a plain where every step was a gamble, where food and death mingled in the soil. Night fell, and they sought refuge in a shallow cave at the base of a craggy ridge. The wind howled outside, but inside they lit no fire, only pressed close for warmth, licking wounds, clutching crude tools, waiting for the swarm's memory to fade. Yet safety was an illusion. A rival band had followed them shadows at the cave's mouth, eyes glinting with hunger, not just for food, but for dominance. Tomorrow's conflict would not just be against ants, but against their own kind, drawn together by the desperation of a land alive with venom. The swarm was relentless. The plains belonged to the ants, yet so too did it belong to those who dared defy them. And in this fragile balance between fury and endurance, the first seeds of myth were sown. The dawn came with a brittle silence, broken only by the rustle of dry grass. The Australopithecus tribe stirred cautiously, their bodies stiff from the night, their welts still aching. Hunger drove them, but every glance at the soil carried dread. The ants had turned the land into a shifting battlefield unseen, until their swarm erupted like fire from below. The leader, a scarred male with broad shoulders, signaled with a guttural grunt, urging the group toward the riverbank. Water meant safety. However brief for the ants, rarely ventured into the damp mud. At the river's edge, they found tracks, hoofprints pressed deep into the earth. Antelope had crossed recently. The hunters crouched, tracing them with calloused fingers, their eyes narrowing. To survive, they must risk again what yesterday had cost them. The group split, half circling wide across the plains. The other half crouched low in reeds, waiting to ambush. The plan was simple, yet desperate: drive the herd toward the river, where the ambushers could strike with stones and sharpened sticks. But the plains did not give without taking. As the hunters fanned out, one female stumbled her foot, sinking into loose soil. At once the ground quivered alive. Ants poured out, surging up her legs. She convulsed, slapping at her own skin, her cries raw and primal. The hunters froze, torn between saving her and preserving the hunt. The leader's roar broke the hesitation. Two males lunged, dragging her toward the river, their arms covered in writhing stingers. The sacrifice cost them speed, and the herd bolted, scattering away into the horizon. Food had fled once more. The tribe was left with nothing but swollen wounds and hollow bellies. Frustration boiled. In the distance, the rival band emerged from behind acacia trees, their silhouettes stark against the rising sun. They had watched, waiting like vultures for weakness. With guttural snarls, they rushed forward, aiming not for bloodshed, but for intimidation to seize territory near the riverbank. Rocks clashed against rocks, sticks jabbed bodies, collided in a primal struggle of dominance. The ants became a secondary threat, as human instinct turned against its own kind. Dust rose in choking clouds, limbs flailed, and shrieks echoed across the savanna. Yet the chaos had its cost. The vibrations of the skirmish awakened the earth again. Both tribes, locked in combat, failed to notice the dark streams slithering out of hidden mounds. Ants swarmed into the melee, stinging both friend and foe alike. What had begun as a battle for dominance turned into a shared nightmare. Rivals stumbled apart, howling, clawing at their own flesh, retreating in blind panic from the unseen army that spared no one. The river became salvation once more. The Australopithecus band plunged into the shallow waters, thrashing, letting the current wash ants from their bodies. Across the bank, their rivals did the same, both groups reduced to trembling, battered survivors of an enemy neither could conquer. For a fleeting moment, the war between them dissolved, replaced by the silent understanding that the plains belonged to another power entirely. In the fading light of morning, the tribe huddled on the muddy bank. Their bellies remained empty, but their unity, tested by fire and sting, held fast. Survival had demanded sacrifice, and they had endured. Yet the horizon still shimmered with heat, and in the distance, mounds of earth promised more torment to come. The third day rose with the shimmer of heat waves across the plains, and the Australopithecus band moved with weary determination. Every step was deliberate, each foot pressed cautiously against the soil, as though the earth itself might betray them again. Their wounds were fading, smeared with herbal pastes, but hunger gnawed more fiercely than ever. Instinct drove them toward a lone acacia tree, where birds circled overhead, a sign of insects, and perhaps small prey. They found instead a marvel of survival. Beneath the tree's shade, a mound towered vast, alive, the fortress of a super colony. The ground vibrated faintly, the surface crawling with sentinels. Yet within reach, sprouting along its base, were roots fat with moisture, sweet with hidden sustenance. The tribe hesitated. To approach was to court pain, yet to starve was a slower death. The leader struck the earth with his stone, prying one free. Ants erupted, but this time the tribe fought with grim resolve, smearing mud across their legs, flinging handfuls of ash from burned reeds to confuse the swarm. They tore the roots free, retreating with cries that blended pain and triumph. For the first time, the ants had yielded sustenance rather than ruin. That night, around the glowing embers of a cautious fire, they shared the roots in silence. The flames kept most of the swarm at bay, their crackle masking the distant calls of predators. One childless female let out a soft guttural hum, a sound that spread through the group until it became a low chorus, an ancient song of endurance. In that moment, survival was not just endurance, but myth. Against beasts of claw and fang, against rivals, and against the endless fury of ants they had endured. Tomorrow would bring new battles, but tonight, the tribe knew victory not of conquest, but of unity.